Howard Stern Show on December 6th, and his first announcement is Ralph Cirella, his buddy and stylist, had passed, and this was quite shocking news. I don't think anybody knew that he was sick. You will see some clips from some of the folks that I've interviewed here on my show talking about Ralph, but I want to just give you the rundown of how Howard went through this morning, and it was an interesting show to hear him do this. So Howard, of course, starts the show with, "Hey now," and then he said, "Well, I've had a horrible day." So you never know what he's going to say after that, but he says, "I have to announce today my dear friend Ralph has passed away." He said he was sad. He said he was angry. He said, people really loved him. They hated him. They loved to hate him. And that's what made some great radio. And he was very sad about him. He'll talk about what happened here in a little bit. He said that he'd known Ralph for over 40 years. He said it started with him calling into the show, and they played that clip when he actually did call in, just as a regular caller. And Howard was giving him shit, but it turned into a relationship after that. He said, we just loved to laugh together. He had such a similar sense of humor, and that's why I was such a friend of his, because we would laugh at the same stupid stuff. He said, that's why I would bring him to Letterman with me, and that's why I brought him to AGT with me. Yeah, he was my stylist, but we would just laugh nonstop, and he would call me, and we'd make these just stupid little noises at each other. And so Howard, today I'll just say it was an interesting show, because Howard was actually giving a real eulogy about someone he really liked, but definitely some voice quivering, but did get through it. And there was a lot of laughs, but he went on and talked about how they would call each other douchebags, and they would just say "hey now" to each other back and forth for hours. And he said he loved that show. He loved the Larry Sanders Show, and it'll come up later that he just loved the 90s so much. He said that that's how they developed this strong friendship, through these phone calls and all the time they spent together. He said they would be on the phone or just in person, just doing George Takei impressions back to each other for hours. And then he went on to talk about how he saw so much in his private life, and he kept it private, and that's why he trusted Ralph so much. They were good friends, and Ralph would never betray him, and he always felt that. He said, though, that Ralph, this is where he talks about his health. He said he did not take care of himself. He did not have health insurance. Howard implored him to get health insurance, but he never did. So Howard felt kind of that he had to take care of him. Finally did get health insurance squared away at the end, but it was a bit too late, evidently. Went back to talking about how he made his prosthetics back in the early 90s on the Channel 9 show, and that's really when they became pretty good friends. He just, I guess, showed him that he could make a Larry King look-alike, or Robert Kennedy, Captain Kirk. So the Channel 9 show is where him and Ralph really became good friends. If you remember the Channel 9 show, this is Brad's take, he would come on, and he looked just like Howard, and they'd make fun of his Barry, and his Barry would talk, actually. So I was always interested in who this guy was, because he did look odd. But Howard always said he's the biggest cheerleader of mine. Anytime I did an interview, he would call and tell me how great it was, and he was just a really good friend. He said his last few days, he got much sicker. He wasn't doing well, but they thought that he was going to get through this. He had a rare case of lymphoma, according to Howard, and they were going to do a procedure, and it was supposed to be a kind of a very small procedure, but it did not go well, and his heart gave out. So it was evidently Tuesday morning he passed on December 5th, which is also the day my dad passed some 23 years ago. He said that Howard said he was talking to Dr. Agnes a bunch, which I thought was interesting that they're still having conversations, but asking about Ralph's situation. Mentioned how he met Beth with him at a party, and we've documented that well here, and you'll hear some stories from Chris Booker and Crazy Cabby, who I believe were both there at the same time, and I'll play those here in a second. But he said that Beth always loved Ralph as well, thought he was just the nicest guy. At one point, I thought he said something interesting. He said, I was his Barbie doll for Ralph. He would get to work on my hair along with Tony Coburn. He said Tony, who you'll remember from the E! Show, was on a few times. Tony did Howard's hair, but she's devastated as well, as those two hung out a bunch. He said he always played along with the gay stuff. They had Ed Torian do the lie detector, and they had a long conversation, played some clips about that. He said he last spoke to Ralph on Monday night, and said, I think it was a positive conversation, but he did die the next morning. Ralph thought he got lymphoma from being down around the 9/11 site, which Howard did not even know this, but he said he went down there and volunteered a bunch, and he didn't tell anybody, but he is convinced that's where he got the lymphoma. Very, very interesting part was what caller just called and asked straight out, did he ever come out to you and say he was gay? And so I'm going to read this as verbatim as I can. He said, I know a lot about Ralph's real life, and as I said, Ralph knew everything about my real life. He really did. I've confided in Ralph many times as a friend because I knew I could trust him, and he did the same with me. And yes, I do know, I know what Ralph was about sexually and other things, and that'll be going to the grave with me. And I said to Ralph, it doesn't make a difference to me. You're my friend. I don't give a shit what you are, who you are. I don't care if you're blowing someone or effing a woman. Whatever you're up to, it doesn't matter. But yeah, I know the real Ralph for sure. Of course I did. So Howard kind of almost letting things out of the bag there a little bit, I would say, but didn't go too far. And he's saying he'll take it to the grave, but pretty much kept it open that Ralph was probably into a lot of stuff, as everyone pretty much noted. Had a lot of tributes of the staff members. Chris Wilding came in and kind of started crying. I guess they had a falling out, and of course Chris is gay, so I'm sure they had a special relationship somehow. But Chris did not feel great today. He said that he wanted to write a book about the 90s. He loved the 90s. Jason Kaplan came in and said this is his, Ralph was his first real friend. Ralph actually had an idea for a show and was going to do it, and about 2 months later, Howard's like, where is it? He never got to it, so Jason got to do it. He said it was his first thing. So Ross Apin and Gary and Sal, they all had stories. Howard said, I feel good. I was there calming him down at the end. He was not calm. Gary called him coworker, or called him family, not a coworker. So a lot of nice tributes. Sal came in and told a story of about him and said that the Carol of the Balls would be a fitting tribute today. And they did do that later. So the first 2 hours of the show really was just telling Ralph stories. It was a really good tribute, I thought. There was some clips, and you even if you hated him on the show, you got to know him a lot better just by listening to this tribute from staff members and the clips they were playing. And basically Howard wrapped it up by saying he was the brother I never had. I'm going to miss him. And Robin said he was always there when you needed him. So sad day for Stern fans. And even if you, of course, he was one of a villain on the show. He said, oh, by the way, that Howard said he loved Eric the actor. He said it was one of his favorite characters. He loved listening to him and doing his voice. But yeah, as a longtime Stern fan, it is an interesting day that someone really close to the show has passed. It's been, I don't really remember outside of his parents. I can't remember off the top of my head someone this close passing that was in that inner circle. Of course, I've interviewed a lot of folks on the show about everything, but the night that Beth and Howard met, Chris Booker and, as I said, Crazy Cabby were both there. I'm going to have them tell those stories here. And then Chauncey Hayden, who is also a villain for many years, could understand what being a villain on the show was, and he discussed Ralph. So kind of a sad day for Stern fans, but hopefully this helped you understand how Howard took it this morning. Again, I thought it was a really interesting morning of Howard being a real person. Again, didn't really break down too hard, but I guess he's probably still in shock. But I think this is how Howard copes, is by going on the radio and talking about it. So here's some of those stories I talked about, and hopefully you'll catch me soon when we're back with some new guests coming in the new year.
Friendship with Howard really started through Ralph. Ralph and I were buddies at K-Rock, and, I was the night guy.
I got to be honest. Wait, I didn't know Ralph had other friends. I'm shocked.
Yes, I'm one of Ralph's few friends. No, Ralph is a ton of fun, and completely not... He's a lot different than the I think Ralph is a character at times, but not really. But he's super fun. He's a super great guy, and we're still very good friends. But Ralph and I just started palling around. You know, I'd start dragging him to the station shows and stuff, and he would always be around for everything. And you know, we're 20 some years younger, so we were all over New York, and we were having the time of our lives. And he was a part of that show, and I think at one point, I think we went to some movie or something. I want to say like it was a Batman movie, one of the terrible Batmans, something like that. And Ralph's like, "Oh, Howard's got a screening somewhere. You should come." And I'm like, "Okay." And Howard had put me on the air, but it was really kind of the first time just getting to hang out and, you know, get to know Howard a little bit, you know, off the air. And he's the sweetest man you'll ever meet in your life. I mean, he's just, he's lovely. He's attentive, and he seems to care. And, you know, after 2 minutes of hanging out with him, you forget he's Howard Stern. But, you know, he's just a nice guy. And it was an awesome time, you know, to be, 25? And, you know, I'm palling around with the greatest that's ever done it in my field of expertise. Let's air quote that, in my field of profession, radio. So that was pretty wild. So, but that also sets the bar for you. I think that, you know, some of the things that he does or the way he handles himself, I think rubbed off, and maybe that's a key to, maybe that has something to do with my longevity. I don't know, but he's great, and he teaches a lot of great lessons. But he's been an awesome friend. He's just been really, all these years. I'm sitting here looking at my cat. I got my cat because of them. He's just he's a great guy, and it was fun. There was nothing better than those days when Howard got single, and we started, you know, going out. I think that's probably why we're still friends, because there was just such a little circle of us. They were a really tight-knit group, and we kind of did everything, and we just ran around constantly like dickheads, and it was fun. It was just fun.
So you've been around a long time. What's the deal with Ralph? Give me something there. I mean, are they? It's just the oddest relationship I've ever seen.
Ralph and I both lived in Jersey City for a while together. Ralph hates me, and he hated me, but he hated me even when Howard liked me. He hated me. Ralph always hated me. And
now, Ralph is a true villain. See, that's a guy I can get behind
Howard did a contest once. Right before I was banned, he did a contest. Who's hated more, Chauncey or Ralph? He did a whole thing about that. And I won. It was right before I got banned. The fans voted me more hated than Ralph. So you can imagine. But I think Ralph always saw me as a threat to his role on the show. Everyone has a role. And Ralph saw where I was going. I was getting a lot. I was on every day, every single day. And he could see how it liked me. He really liked me. That sounds a little gay, but he did. He liked me. And Ralph saw that as a threat to his airtime. And this is the show. And a lot of the guys that are on the show as staffers will show you. It's very backstabbing. It really is. It's a nasty place back there. And if you're a threat to someone on that show, it's ugly and it's dirty. And Ralph, I think, always saw me as that guy. You know, he just didn't like me. Didn't like the possibility that Howard I might become his friend, you know? Drove Ralph crazy. But again, I exploited that. I exploited that with Ronnie. Ronnie was very easy to exploit and piss off. Ronnie was the easiest, because Ronnie hated me almost as much as Ralph. And I knew that Ronnie's Achilles heel were the strip clubs. So all I had to do was attack him from that angle, and he would come charging into the studio with his chest puffed, wanting to have a fist fight. And it was too easy. And then I knew I had a segment. It was gold. And Howard would go like this during the commercial. Give me the thumbs up. I go, I know. Like Howard loved it. He loved that I knew how to push everyone's button, where I would be that guy and not him. And Howard could say, well, Chauncey says, or, Chauncey's saying this about Fred. And it wasn't Howard saying it. Chauncey said it. Even the name Chauncey, it's like fingers down a chalkboard. Well, Chauncey said it. And you could just see people getting so angry. And I loved it. I did. I loved it.